That is the guy. If you want someone who's going to be able to be anti-establishment, stand on business, and be able to reach out to white men and bring back some of this youth vote directly to the Democratic Party, then you have to put your efforts behind people like this rather than attack them as though they are antagonistic to your agenda. Economists from across the world unite in support of Zohran Mamdani's plan for New York City, a bold yet practical blueprint to tackle the city's most urgent challenges. Yeah, this makes sense. One of the things that I find here, we'll start out with Zohran Mamdani. For those of you who don't know, Zohran Mamdani is a beacon of light and hope in an otherwise dark American future. And this is the reason why there is, I have a lot of fears about how hard they are going to try to stamp him out. Luckily, it hasn't happened thus far, but through simply just incredible organizing and building a campaign, and also being a prominent fixture in New York state politics for quite a while, he is able to put together an incredible campaign. He's been ever present. He's been all over the place. He has made up basically a 40-point lead that Andrew Cuomo had over him, and at the final moment, the New York mayoral race is going to happen. The primaries, the Democratic New York mayoral primaries, which is basically the real mayor race, is happening in 4 days in New York. Okay. And America's mayor, Zohran Mamdani, hopefully is going to win. A lot of people have been attacking him, saying that he is inexperienced, he's too young, he's too radical. It's been quite interesting watching all this stuff. One of the takes that Peter Beinart had was, it's fine to ask Zohran Mamdani about globalize the intifada. I get why it disturbs most Jews, but New York Magazine just published a 10K word. For the record, I don't even agree with this first part. I think it's silly bullshit. But New York Magazine just published a 10,000 word cover story arguing that Israel has committed hundreds, if not thousands, of war crimes in Gaza. Andrew Cuomo is Netanyahu's lawyer. What does it say about the media's view of Palestinian life that that's considered less important in this race? This is a fairly solid approach to the subject, which is that, like, Israel is doing a genocide, and the media is still way more hyper focused on like how certain words make certain people feel bad, and people that are just like being cynically using this like either hysterics or maybe even fears that they genuinely hysterically have in their hearts, or people who are like not even fearful but like are cynically making these statements in an effort to like attack the top candidate to defeat Andrew Cuomo. I am very fearful right now because Adrian Adam refused to co-endorse and even refuses to say don't vote Cuomo. Zohran needs her voters to win because as of recent polls, they're going mostly to Cuomo right now. Yeah. I know, but hopefully Zohran's turnout method, which is again something that we always cope about every election cycle for outside of the box thinkers and anti-establishment candidates, will be able to overcome that gap. Who knows? She's been so disappointing. Yes, liberals will always disappoint you. Wait, what? Oh, Adrian Adams actually endorsed the Working Family Party slate. That's not. Adrian Adams finally, after much hand-wringing, indecision, and mixed signals, says not to rank Cuomo and goes into blistering criticism of his tenure as governor. She also says to rank Mamdani, Lander, Myrie in some order after ranking her number one. Better late than never, I guess. That's not bad. That's not bad. Here's how ranked choice voting works in favor of Zohran. Zohran is the top dog here. So when she says, when she says don't rank Zohran number 2, but like says you should rank Zohran, Lander, and Myrie, Brad Lander is the third candidate, right? Brad Lander is like currently in third place. Lander has some voters that will go for Andrew Cuomo and some voters that will go for Zohran. But because of their cross endorsement if people who ranked Lander number 1 are ranking Zohran number 2, all of a sudden, that weighs in favor of Zohran on the 3rd or 4th round. You know what I mean? Like, depending on how people have ranked Zohran. This is one of the advantages of ranked choice voting. Dem socks can never win. Should be obvious for anyone with pattern recognition, and the reason is simple: the democracy is no longer real because the system we exist under is uniparty. Here's a funny little update. Petite bourgeois capital strikes on behalf of the socialist candidate. Incredible things are happening. Hello, New Yorkers. If Cuomo gets elected, we will double our prices. No joke. I think this is very funny. There's going to be a petite bourgeois uprising. This is something Marx could not have predicted. This is, unironically, half the time when people say like, oh, Marx never had a statement about this, and it's like something that he's written extensively about. This, unironically, I'm fairly certain, maybe I'm wrong, but this is not something he could have thought. He could have foreseen. Okay? Can you do a History Hyenas episode with Chris DiStefano? I might. I just texted him after you said that, and he said he might want me on his history app. Have you ever discussed AIPAC-affiliated student groups on college campuses? WashU has a group called WIPAC, train students to lobby lawmakers. Yes, we have. There is a comprehensive documentary that was actually taken off the airwaves that Al Jazeera put together, I believe, called the Israel Lobby or The Lobby. And that extensively features college campus student groups that are a functioning arm of the Zionist lobbying apparatus in this country, and some of the most insane stuff that they've gotten up to, including but not limited to, and this isn't to say like this isn't to like discount anti-Semitic hate crimes or whatever, but like literally faking anti-Semitic hate crimes on college campuses. There's extensive documentation on a lot of the ways in which they operate within the student government body and do a whole bunch of crazy stuff. Today I'm calling on the New York City Campaign Finance Board to lift the spending cap on our campaign as Andrew Cuomo's Republican billionaire super PAC, the largest in the city's history, tries to interfere in our democracy. We can't let rich donors silence the voices of working people. We refuse to let the city's future be determined by the whims of the wealthy. Yeah. Either make it illegal for super PACs to interfere in these elections or open up the lift the cap. Bernie Sanders also came out and spoke on this. Why are billionaire super PACs spending millions to defeat Zohran Mamdani for mayor of New York City? Not complicated. They're afraid of a mayor who will take on powerful special interests and represent working families. They have the money. We have the people. Let's get out and vote. Did you see a lot of the canvassers for Cuomo casually just saying they're paid? Yeah, of course they are. If you are getting paid to canvass for Cuomo, do a bad job. It's not illegal. Do a bad job. It's for shit pay anyway. How are they going to check? How are they going to know? His campaign has nothing. His campaign does not have like real loyalty. If you've taken the money of the Cuomo campaign, it is your duty to do a bad job. Brad Lander is back at the same New York City immigration court to help escort immigrants past agents. Anyway, Zohran getting a lot of big labor endorsements today. UAW has endorsed, or Sean Fain has come out. UAW President Fain and our New York City members are proud to support Zohran Mamdani. He's not owned by Wall Street. He's fighting for $30 an hour, free transit, housing for all, real democracy.
The UAW takes on some of the...
Be careful, my man. After Obama, I stopped getting emotionally invested in any politician. I agree. I know exactly what you mean, but this is not the time to make those calculations, because the alternative is Andrew Cuomo. And I know for a fact that even if Zohran promises a whole deal and only gets like 10% of it done, it's still better than what Andrew Cuomo is promising, which is nothing. Okay? We know Andrew Cuomo's track record. I'd rather place a bet on a new face that is ideologically aligned with me, even if he becomes a charlatan down the line. I'm not going to think about whether or not this is going to turn into a Chicago mayor situation. I'm not going to think about how this could turn into a John Fetterman situation, which I don't think it will. I think if there's like a John Fetterman style situation, it's the other candidates that are ranked beneath Zohran overall. Cuomo is going to. That's insane. You took two of the things that Andrew Cuomo has done and sandwiched them together, it seems. I'm not even going to say that out loud, but that is, you know, that is an interesting campaign promise, but it feels like it's a little bit confused because I think you just took two things that Cuomo has done independently and put them together. He does those things separately.
Richest employers in the country. Employers like Mercedes-Benz, Columbia University, NYU, Mount Sinai, and Sony. So we know a thing or two about how bosses act.
What happened with Chicago mayor? Chicago is very different. Chicago is very different. It's a city that is incredibly corrupt and run by the ward system. Like the what is it? It's like their version of the council members. Aldermen. Sorry, thank you. The aldermen run the city. The mayor is a mayoral position in big cities in America is already like an incredibly difficult position because you're basically just like servile to the interests of you're servile to the interests of all the corporate donors, especially in New York as well. You are held captive by a paramilitary that has endless amounts of money and will literally threaten you. Same goes for Chicago. Chicago, you even have more limited power than the New York mayor does. So that is it is a real sad state of affairs. It's a real scary predicament. But Brandon Johnson basically is one of the least popular mayors in the country, if not the least popular mayor in the country. He ran as like a DSA style guy. But I think the calcified corruption within Chicago politics, within Illinois politics, but especially Chicago politics, and his lack of experience overall in navigating that space made it so that he promised a bunch and then wasn't able to fulfill any of those promises. I recognized this when I went to Chicago. When I went to Chicago the first time with DNC, I was like, what is this cop presence like? Isn't Brandon Johnson supposed to be like a lefty? What the hell is this? He's he certainly was not. I mean, he is at the mercy of all of the corrupt elements that dominate Chicago politics in perpetuity that have, and he is completely subservient to those demands, those interests, and therefore didn't get anything done and is seen as like a feckless institutionalist with ridiculous ideas at this point. New York, on the other hand, you do have more power over this position, even though there are obviously more significant enemies as well, more significant moneyed interests. But I will say it like this. If the New York mayoral position wasn't so effective, like for changing New York City politics, they wouldn't be dumping tens of millions of dollars right now to dismantle the Zohran Mamdani momentum.
They view the workplace like a dictatorship. The corporate class expects to be treated like kings. They want us silent, obedient, disposable. They expect workers to sit down and shut up. That's not just how they run their workplaces, it's how they want to run our country. That's exactly how Andrew Cuomo ran New York when he was governor. He bullied and harassed workers. He cut Medicaid in the middle of a pandemic. And when striking UAW members needed his support on the picket line, he was nowhere to be found. Those days are over because across New York City, the working class is rising up. We are demanding higher wages, health care for all, a secure retirement, a home we can afford. Because here's the secret truth that the billionaire class doesn't want us to know. We are the majority. And when we stand up, nobody can stand in our way. We don't need another hack politician like Cuomo, someone who smiles for the cameras and then sells us out behind closed doors. What we need is a national movement that unites the working class.
Is this Grant Minor?
is a national movement that unites the working class to take on the oligarchs and rebuild our democracy.
Is he? Is that him? He's the student union leader of Colombia that was fired. He's the Jewish student union leader, UAW student leader that was fired from his position and because, you know, anti-Semitism.
And
why are you spending so much time on the New York City mayoral race? Part of the reason why is because New York City is a very important stronghold for Democratic Party politics. New York City in and of itself is a major city for the entire world, right? New York City's police department, which the mayor would control, is larger than many countries' standing armies. So regardless of all of the corporate interests that dominate New York City politics, having a guy like Zohran there is ultimately going to prove a point that these kinds of politics are actually effective, even past the point of maybe even some of the gains that Bill de Blasio made, which should not be discounted. Bill de Blasio is actually such an interesting mayor that, I mean, he's been dunked on quite a bit, but like he was significantly better than Eric Adams and many other mayors that came before and after him. And it's really interesting that like we don't really talk or think about his track record. Like, I mean, I think he did the free pre-K initiative. That was huge. Actually, speaking of some of the initiatives that previous mayors have been able to implement, what I find strange is how much people are talking about how radical and scary and pie in the sky these Zohran ideas are. Zohran's vision is. Yes, he is a socialist. He's a democratic socialist. He doesn't shy away from saying that. But if you look at the policies that he's running on, it's things that have literally been implemented. A rent freeze has been implemented in the city with previous mayors. Okay? He talks about free buses. Once again, a policy that he has directly been able to implement in the state assembly. Okay? So the idea that this is like impossible to do is so ridiculous. Nothing that he's talking about is like, he's not saying like I'm tackling the commodity production at its heart. Like we're gonna build workers' councils and create a dictatorship of the proletariat. He's just advocating for minor social democratic reforms that are super realistic for him as mayor of New York. So the notion that like these are crazy, radical, terrifying changes that he wants to fucking push for is insane. Another thing, cooperatively owned grocery, like state-owned, city-owned grocery stores, that is something that people have been able to do as 501c3s. Why the would the state not be able to do that when they literally have all of the licensing and all of the other more costly elements of maintaining a chain of grocery stores? Like you could very easily do that. You could very easily start small and implement this as a project. This was also Brandon Johnson's promise as well, which I thought was going to be awesome. And the notion that this is like impossible, the notion that this is like an impossible thing is so stupid. These guys are actively trying to, the media is actively trying to terrify people into thinking that even modest social democracy is impossible to implement, right? The idea that these socialist policies can't be implemented when they've existed for years is just capitalism propaganda. Yeah. And I also will say, with the exception of like, Adam Carlson, that pollster guy who I think is like a kind of a liberal, maybe a social democrat who doesn't like me. I'm seeing a lot of dishonesty from people who are supposedly social democrats who want like the abundance agenda and yet actively openly want to defeat Zohran Mamdani. Zohran Mamdani's agenda is supposed to be directly your agenda. If you're a social democrat, then you absolutely should be on board. Like Ezra Klein should be 100% on board with Zohran Mamdani. Okay? Ezra Klein's wife, I don't know what her politics are, but she wrote a scathing piece about how undemocratic the ranked choice voting structure is, amongst other silly articles that she's written in the past about, like, you know, egg prices and whatnot, are freaking out. So why are they? Why is Ezra Klein not endorsing Zohran Mamdani, but instead endorsing Brad Lander? Now, Brad Lander has some decent policies as well. As a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say, will Brad Lander also be a fighter and implement the same policies that Zohran wants to implement? I don't know. I trust Zohran more than I trust Brad in terms of the implementation. Having said that, there's only one major difference between Brad Lander and Zohran Mamdani, and it revolves around Israel. He's a liberal Zionist. Zohran is an anti-Zionist. I don't even have an issue with Brad Lander. I think a lot of people are like, oh no, he's there to rat Zohran. I think you guys don't understand that his primary purpose here, as far as like endorsing Zohran, plays a major role. And I think he actually likes Zohran Mamdani and vice versa. I don't think that there is animosity there, regardless of that one clip that everybody saw about him being like, oh yeah, it scares me when I hear someone say globalize the intifada as a Jew or whatever. But he is the third option here, and he's Jewish. And as a Jewish person who is literally the third runner-up, he endorsed Zohran Mamdani. They did a cross endorsement. Like, you guys are crazy. That plays a huge role. You can always turn around and say, what are you talking about? You think Jews are terrified of Zohran Mamdani? Well, here is the Jewish guy on the ticket that is third, is the runner-up, endorsing Zohran Mamdani and saying Andrew Cuomo is the real bigot here. So everybody needs to calm down. I understand why tensions run high. That is not the Elizabeth Warren method, okay? What Brad Lander has done so far is not the Elizabeth Warren method at all. I don't agree with Michael from Pennsylvania on this issue. This is a minor disagreement we have. Does that mean I prefer Brad Lander? Of course not. I prefer Zohran. I only want Zohran to win. I don't care as much. I don't believe that any of these other guys would even fight remotely as hard as Zohran would. Okay? So, my point is, someone like Ezra Klein, seeing the opportunity for Zohran to actually win, as opposed to Brad Lander, is putting is throwing his hat in the ring in defense of Brad Lander as a famous liberal opinion columnist for the New York Times. After the New York Times' editorial board basically didn't endorse, it did an anti-endorsement of Zohran, for the record, and talked about how scary he was. He's doing this because he doesn't also like Zohran's policies either, even though Zohran's policies are perfectly in line with the agenda of abundance. Why are you just hand-waving at the concerns of pro-Israel voters in New York who worry about Zohran taking command of a police force larger than most countries and using them to invade Israel? Bro, at first I thought you were being serious. At first I thought you were being serious for a second. That's so funny. These are real concerns that Zohran needs to address. They already have a military stronghold. New York Police Department, NYPD already has a foothold in Tel Aviv. Oh my God, it's happening. The New York Police Department does have submarines. What if they were to use those submarines against Israel? That's secretly the reason why I want to. That's the reason why I'm voting illegally for Zohran. I'm voting illegally for Zohran so that he can use the New York Police Department military base that already exists in Tel Aviv to directly invade. Yeah, NYPD RGC Tactical Alliance. NYPD does stand for New York Palestine Defenders. Open presents. Thank you for the 100 gifted subs. Goddamn. Ezra Klein made a video for the New York Times that's critical of Israel
at this point to overstate how.
Yeah, Ezra is also, once again, and if you listen to him talk to Ta-Nehisi Coates, like, he is also peak liberal Zionism, okay? which once again is an inherently contradictory
don't think it's
position. The values of liberalism, at least in theory, do not work with fascism. You cannot be a liberal and then advocate for fascism. Because think about it this way. Zionism is an ideology, both in practice and also in theory, that is built around ethno-religious supremacist values and extermination. Therefore, it is fascist. Okay? Now, instead of saying liberal Zionism, let's use liberal fascism as a stand-in. Let's substitute, considering that Zionism is fascism, let's substitute the term Zionism for fascism. Hey, I'm a liberal fascist. Okay, the f does that mean? So you're just a gay fascist? Like, what's the, like, what do you mean? It doesn't work. It's ridiculous. And as long as that contradiction at the heart of Zionism is left unaddressed, Israeli society and those who back Israeli society will be oblivious to the changes in Israeli society. They'll just go, oh, how did this happen? How did they become so right-wing? You know? Oh, I don't like how right-wing Israel has become. I just don't fully understand how it happened. It's like, it's happening because you're just not addressing the dehumanization of Palestinians, the indigenous population that Israel constantly is seeking out to dominate. If you don't address that, if you don't address that inherent problem, okay, you will never be able to understand why Israeli society keeps becoming more and more right-wing. You know? That's it. But yeah, Bill Clinton's Secretary of Labor endorses Zohran over Clinton's HUD Secretary. Robert Reich, of course, endorsed Zohran Mamdani. That makes perfect sense. Zohran is standing up to the oligarchy and fighting to make one of America's most expensive cities affordable for the working class. If you're a New York voter, I urge you to rank him #1 on your ballot by next Tuesday. Brad Lander showed true courage. He also deserves a top rank in New Yorkers' ballots. Democrats cannot win back working class voters by putting forth more corporate-backed politicians. There's a better path forward. Why don't you go into politics? Brother, I'm already in politics. It's just, I'm not directly in politics as a politician, but I think at this point, it's safe to say I am in politics. What do you mean? Not only have I endorsed Zohran quite a while ago, but I've also offered my platform to him, and I have many Hasanabi heads who are working both inside his campaign and also door knocking with regular frequency. And I urge you guys to do that, or urge you guys to go, if you live in New York, go and help out. Please. I hate when you cover politics. Damn. It's got to be a tough week for you then, chatter. Lots of politics being covered. As we as economists from across the world to support Zohran Mamdani's mayoral platform is a bold yet practical blueprint to tackle some of the New York's most urgent challenges, above all the cost of living. His platform proposes targeted, responsible interventions that would immediately improve millions of lives while building a fairer and prosperous New York. At the heart of Mamdani's platform is his plan to a rent freeze, offering urgent relief to over 2 million tenants in rent-stabilized apartments facing inflationary shocks and displacement. As economists, we recognize that unchecked rent spikes destabilized neighborhoods, increase homelessness, a far costlier public burden, and drain local economies. One argument that I also am, I make with normies, that I deploy with normies, that I think you guys can too, is like, listen, man, nobody wants to have homeless people on the road, okay, who are going through a mental health episode, who want to smoke crack on the subway station, okay? If they want to do that, I think the most effective solution to that is to put them in housing and then offer them help. Much easier to do in a confined area, you know? That's my assessment of the situation. It's been fairly effective when I'm talking to Los Angeles people who are, advocating to basically destroy the homeless population here by killing them. I'm like, listen, there's a dude that jerks off outside of my house, okay? That's crazy. I don't want that. Of course, I hate that. My mom walks my dog sometimes. You know what I mean? That's like, I don't want her to experience that. That's ridiculous, okay? I've talked about this before. I would much rather have that dude jerk off in a confined space, okay? I would much, if that dude wants to masturbate, let him masturbate in a house, okay? All of a sudden, it's no longer a crime. It's something that everybody does. Doesn't that make sense? Makes sense to me. And no, nothing I said is a hypothetical. This is a real conversation that I've had, and this is also a real thing that happens. Okay? In other places that I lived in, there's a homeless person that would shit outside my house sometimes, okay? Just drop a poopy. Why is he doing that? Because he doesn't have a place to drop a dookie, okay? Much rather have that person live in a home, have proper plumbing, and drop a dookie in a toilet rather than outside of my house, okay? Do you understand? That's it. It makes sense. But that's really covering up the problem instead of solving the problem, which is drugs. So you just want to cover up the problem? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? I never said that these people don't deserve to get the proper medical attention that is necessary. The fuck do you mean? I'm saying the first and immediate solution to that is to get them into permanent shelter, okay? You don't know what your neighbors are doing in terms of how many drugs they're consuming. It's much better that they're doing it behind closed doors than they're doing it in broad daylight, right? If someone's going to smoke crack and if someone is going to go through the rehabilitation process, I think probably putting them in permanent shelter is the first step. That is the most effective step on their journey of recovery, don't you think? The greatest example for this, of course, is rich people's kids. They do a ton of drugs. What happens? They get shipped off to Malibu to an expensive rehab center, and it doesn't become everybody else's problem. You know? Even if in the incredibly unlikely scenario that a homeless person recovers from their drug addiction, okay, they're still homeless. That's still a major problem. You haven't solved it. They are infinitely more likely to get back into drugs as a consequence of like being homeless and wanting to self-medicate and you know, not feel the pain of not having shelter every goddamn night. Half the time, that's how they become drug addicts to begin with. But yeah, the whole point is the Democratic Party has been screaming from the mountaintops endlessly about the need for a young, vibrant candidate. Maybe not a young one, but at least a candidate that can activate young people, activate white men, have this broad coalition of voters go out and vote for him, okay? Can be authentic, can go on podcasts and just like be able to communicate effectively about the policy prescriptions that are necessary to solve all these problems. Someone who can advocate for the platform that they're standing on, okay? And the issue is that guy exists. His name is Zohran Mamdani. He's capable of doing all those things, okay? The issue, on the other hand, is the major issue, on the other hand, is that his policies that have literally been implemented in the past by other Democratic leadership, like a rent freeze, is a bridge too far. His policies that are incredibly popular, like trying to increase the taxes on the super wealthy in New York City, a policy that Bernie Sanders also on the national stage advocates for and is profoundly popular, is seen as a non-starter for many establishment Democrats. But perhaps most significantly, another incredibly popular opinion that Zohran has and defends is his position, his firm commitment to being against genocide and being against an ethno-supremacist apartheid regime. This, yet again, is immensely popular with the base of Democrats, but it's not popular with the Democratic Party. So if you say, I'm consistently against what Israel is doing, the Democrats go, nah, we can't have that. They don't realize, the Democrats and their donors in the party don't realize that that is the guy. If you want the guy, if you want someone who's going to be able to be anti-establishment and stand on business and you know, be able to reach out to white men and bring back some of this youth vote directly to the Democratic Party, then you have to put your efforts behind people like this rather than use the vestiges of the party to stamp out this kind of politician and attack them as though they are antagonistic to your agenda. Because when people see this shit, when people see what the Dems are doing here, either staying quiet with the hopes that Andrew Cuomo wins because they're at least too embarrassed to actively push for cop rapist, grandma killer Andrew Cuomo, or even directly defending Andrew Cuomo by saying, oh, well, he's more experienced, people get angry at that. People see the Dems as simply only effective when it comes to stamping out true progressive grassroots campaigns. What's going on with Zohran right now is yet again a similar thing that happened with Bernie Sanders. This is exactly what causes the base to resent the party. You can't maintain popular support while simultaneously stamping out all of your popular politicians and position yourself as antagonistic to them, even when they are quite literally advocating for things that you're supposed to advocate for, and in certain circumstances you do advocate for. I hate that shit. Did something similar happen when AOC ran? No, AOC's biggest benefit was she was unknown, and the Dems got caught with their pants down basically on that one. She hit a candidate she primaried a candidate that was incredibly powerful within the Democratic Party, who thought that that seat was unmovable. She was under the radar, and a lot of Justice Democrats were under the radar. And when they were, the reason why they were so effective in that first batch was because the Dems were not really considering real primary challenges from progressive candidates. But now they know how that stuff works and will actively fight back against candidates like that. That's part of the reason why I was always weighing this calculation on whether or not I should push Zohran too hard early on, when I was already aware of his campaign and actually liked him quite a bit. But I decided to, because I realized that it's necessary for name recognition to get his name out there further and further so that he can build a robust base of grassroots support that is necessary to get his name out there in New York. Hold on. Yeah. Do you see people like Zohran and AOC building coalitions with people like David Hogg to build new coalitions in the Democratic Party? Or is it third party time? We'll see. But in any case, that is my brief Zohran statement. None of the policies that he's advocating for are insane. They have literally been done in the past. Anyone who tries to tell you that these are impossible, these are policies that are impossible to implement, are lying to you deliberately. And it's especially gross when you got people who claim that they are on board with this kind of thing, claim that they're on board with these modest proposals, social democratic proposals that kind of alleviate the stress a little bit, the stress of affordability that New Yorkers are facing a little bit, and then turn around and the person that will actually push for it, the person who has the best possible chance of overthrowing the potential Cuomo mayoral regime, it shows that they're depraved. It shows that they are their true purpose is to constantly stand against progress. What's up? Ne? Al hadi git. Hayır. Evet ve de bir dakika dur, bir şey daha söyleyeceğim, dur. Okay, does anyone have the State Department press briefing? I want to hear what the they have to say today. Hasan Reactions, one of the best ones in the React channel.